All right, why don't we go ahead and start? So our next presenter today is Chris McLaughlin, is the Chief Product and Marketing Officer from Nuxio. He's going to be talking about artificial intelligence and content, modernizing financial services. Again, over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Aaron. And good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to drop down into my content here. And real quickly, before I get started, I just want to take a moment to kind of introduce myself. I am the Chief Product and Marketing Officer for Nuxio. More importantly, I deployed my first content management system for a large nonprofit in about 1995. Did some consulting work after that, deployed more systems at Pacific Air, Farmers Insurance, Florida Annual, and ultimately moved on to the vendor side in 2002, working for FileNet, Thunderhead, Documentum, and now Nuxio. So whole point, I've spent the majority of my career in content management. And, you know, after all of these years, more than I care to calculate or count right now, you know, I am more enthusiastic than ever about content management, and in particular about the potential of AI and content management. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So very quickly, and I've got a reasonable amount of content, so I'm going to kind of hustle through here and allow time for questions. But what I really wanted to do was kind of set this against the backdrop of some of common financial services challenges. Give you a bit of a short primer on AI and some of the capabilities that we're seeing today and how people can work with AI and content to solve some of those common financial services challenges. And then lastly, I'm going to try to tie it all together and give you a case study that really illustrates, you know, what we've been able to do for other customers. And in particular here, working with Crawford Technologies as part of the overall solution. So let's dig in and you know, as we talk about challenges in financial services, I think the thing I really like to start with here is looking at, look, I've been around the enterprise content management space now for more than 20 years. And literally, as we look at different enterprise content management technologies, whether that's CMOD or FileNet or Documentum, you know, one of the things that we have seen here is that really nothing has changed over that period of time. We ran this survey, and the results of this survey came in November of 2019, right? And we talked to financial services firms in the UK. So literally, as you go through the results of the survey, these are the same results we would have gotten 20 years ago, right? Information systems not connected to each other, not fully integrated. 8 out of 10 respondents said that is a challenge for them. The average number of systems that they're running, 9 total across these organizations, average. Time spent looking for information, the result of this fragmentation across different systems, lack of integration, 52 minutes. So again, an hour out of every day spent looking for information. And sadly, those are the kind of results we would have seen previously, prior to enterprise content management. The other thing, and we did ask some questions about artificial intelligence, right? And the bulk of customers here that responded see the potential of AI, particularly around the automation of mundane tasks. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But also see the challenge with AI in terms of believing that their organization doesn't really have the skills to capitalize on artificial intelligence, on machine learning. So, you know, when we look at the space, and we look at these challenges kind of iteratively happening over and over again, you know, fundamentally, we believe that it's just time for a different approach to this. We also believe that AI is one aspect of helping to solve the challenge here. Before I dive into AI, just want to set the backdrop in terms of common financial services needs. And guys, I know for a lot of you, this is motherhood and apple pie, so I won't spend too much time on it. But when we talk to financial services customers, you know, bottom line, more efficiency, more automation. And this really around automation. How do I take cost out of the organization? How do I automate routine work? Real opportunity here for artificial intelligence, machine learning models. And I'll get into details about how in a second. Customer experience remains very important, perhaps more important today than it's ever been before. And I'm going to make the foundational argument that we're dealing with more content, in different places across different devices that is impacting that customer experience. I don't need to explain that to you if you're Crawford customers and you're dealing with customer communications. Clearly, content is part of your customer experience. How you use it and your requirements are changing. We also see for customers that delivering new products and services to the market, and this is not just about marketing and new financial products, it's also about new IT services, new access to information, self-servicing is very, very important for our customers. And some of the old systems they're dealing with make this very, very difficult. If you're a CMOD customer, I don't need to tell you about that. From a cloud standpoint, clearly cloud is important for our customers. Again, not just about cost reduction, but also about managing complexity, bringing new capabilities to the organization. We'll talk about some cloud AI services today as well. And then finally, compliance not going away. And we have some new requirements. Certainly for our European customers, GDPR is important. And now in the United States, since January, CCPA has become important here in California. We have other states considering similar compliance requirements. And this is a big one for us as we look at customer communication. So as I go forward, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing there too. Let's dive in specifically on efficiency and automation. And here I'm really going to focus on AI. So one, when we talk about content, we talk about customer communications, we talk about any different form of content, the foundational aspect here, and when people see this slide, they usually think, oh, I'm talking about information as unstructured information or structured information. No. What I'm talking about is foundationally from a content management standpoint. When we work with content, I don't care whether it's documents, scanned images, AFP, print stream communications, or if it's video, photo, whatever else it is, at the end of the day, it's data that makes that content into information. So when we think about information in an organization, it's very simple. We want it to be readily accessible, easy to find. We want it to be contextual. We need to be able to use it to be able to do work. More recently, we've got to think about availability, and that's just not just mobile devices, but now we need to enable remote workforces in the organization. And then finally, of course, and particularly as we talk about the cloud, we need that information to be both governed and compliant, as well as secure. And perhaps we even need to think about data locality, data residency requirements for international organizations. The bottom line for us is that data enables all of this. Data is the secret to effective content management. Not hard to store content. It's hard to do it well, and doing it well means having the right data about your content. And this is where we see the benefit of AI. And this is why I get so excited about this space. Making with artificial intelligence, and how we can enable, and these are kind of the edge use cases that we're beginning to see now, how we enable more insight about your content, about your information with artificial intelligence. So let me give you some very specific examples here. First, from an extraction standpoint, one of the most common use cases around AI right now is, how do I enrich data about my content? How do I enrich metadata? How do I pull data out of structured content? Now, there are ways to do this with AFP, obviously, since that's a data-based set of content. But for other types of content, if you're dealing with documents, we have a lot of customers right now that are dealing with old scanned images that have very little metadata associated with them, and it makes them very, very hard to find outside of a certain operating environment. So enrichment becomes very important to them. So there are a lot of public cloud services available for artificial intelligence. And what these are really is pre-trained machine learning models. You give them, and I've kind of illustrated here, you give them content, the model looks at the content and brings back data values, typically tags, but there are other things that they can provide for you. So when we look at these services, and if you look across Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and even specialized services. And I illustrated one here like Site Engine. What you're really doing is giving them content and they're returning back values to you. They provide all sorts of great commodity services. If you want to do OCR or ICR, there's a service for that, like Amazon Textract. If you want to do sentiment analysis, there's a service for that. Amazon Comprehend will do that for you. If you want to translate from one language to another, there's a service for that. Transcription, speech to text. Great example here. When we deal with video content and we want to do subtitling, we use this transcription service, Amazon Transcribe, in our videos. If you want to do facial recognition on photos, celebrity recognition, there are lots and lots of public services for AI. And what you're really looking for from a modern content management standpoint is a platform that provides you kind of with a standard way to plug into these different services and take advantage of these commodity services. By the way, these services are stackable, which means that you can OCR, ICR, and then do sentiment analysis. Or maybe you can do transcription and then do sentiment analysis on your content. But here, fundamentally, we want to look for a standardized approach to connect. We want to leverage these services for what they're good for. But the one caution I give you, and something you've got to be aware of with literally all of these different services, is you got to be aware of the law of large numbers. And what I mean here is that the pricing on these services is fantastic, right? For OCR, it's like 6/1000th of a cent per page. And that sounds great, but we have customers. We literally have customers today that are converting TIFF images, 200 million of them, 5 pages per document. So now we're talking about 1 billion pages. If you push all 1 billion pages at a service like Amazon Textract and do OCR on those TIFF images, that's a $600,000 charge right there for those 1 billion pages. So be aware of the law of large numbers with these services. Make sure as you're looking to plug into different services and leverage different services that you understand what you want to get out of it and that there's actual value associated with that. And one of the other things we see from a generic service standpoint, and I've given you an illustration here, and I usually talk about a Ford F-150, but I thought since we're talking about financial services and insurance, I'll use an automobile accident as an example here. The great thing about commodity services is they are very scalable, very performant, and they can work with large volumes of content to do very, very common things. But you have to remember, generic services produce generic data. This is a great example. If you go to Google's website today, and specifically for Google Cloud Vision, you can literally take a photo and load it into their Google Vision service, which this shows the power of AI, right? I can look at a photo. And the thing about photos and video and content like this, not self-describing. It's not a document. It's not a document with a lot of data embedded into it or text embedded into it. But I look at this photo and I get a bunch of values back from the photo. Now, we can argue about how valuable these values are. And really what we're talking about here is labels or tags, right? So I've correctly identified there's a sport utility vehicle in the image. I've even identified that it's a Chevy Tahoe. But I might argue with you that if I were an insurance company, an automobile insurance company, and this was an accident photo that was submitted to me, I might want more specific information. And that specific information comes from machine learning models that have been trained to do specific things. So the benefit of these commodity services is they've been pre-trained. Google, Amazon have used large sets of content and data to train these models, and they're able to give you values back. But they might not be values that are specific for your business. So here from an AI perspective, and something that we've done in our platform with a tool we call Nuxio Insight, is give our customers the ability to train their own custom models using their own content and data. And when you do that, you get 2 key benefits. First, you get more specific data values here. So you can see, I might want to identify this as Chevy Tahoe, might even want to know what the color of that is. And certainly I want to know that there's a license plate video visible in this image, that it's an Illinois license plate, and I want to read that license number. I also want to know the brand of the second vehicle, the model, the color, and you can see, well, I've covered it up, but you got a partial on the Illinois plate and a partial number. And just for fun, I also illustrated the fact that there is an actual face in this model. And we may even want to do some facial recognition here. If we've trained the model to do so, perhaps we have a driver's license image for the operator to be able to identify that this is John Smith. Okay, this is a fictitious example, but the point is to really illustrate, one, that we can get much better data values here, and two, we're doing something different here. This is not tagging, this is entity extraction. So you'll note that we're mapping the values to specific data fields. The real value of this is that I can now automate work, right? Not only am I returning data values, but I'm putting them in the proper fields. I'm in a position now to take this image, associate it with a particular policy, and push it to the next step in the claims process. So key benefits, more accurate data, and the ability to actually do entity extraction here in this circumstance and map that data back to critical fields. By the way, we have customers that are doing this with images today. We have customers that are doing product recognition. We also do digital asset management. You can go in and identify talent models. They can go in and identify specific products. They can apply train models to all different types of content. It works equally with text-based content as well as image-based content. Now, we talked earlier about that challenge of having all these different information silos in the organization. And one of the real challenges we find around information silos is that the way information is described in one system is different than it's described in another system. So one of the things that we see real value with AI and with these machine learning models is that we can begin to enrich content, enrich metadata across these different systems and come up with a consistent master metadata model. The benefit of this, if I'm thinking about something like CCPA and I need to understand where all of this customer information sits inside of an organization, not just in customer communications, but across all of these different silos, if I can establish a consistent data model, now I can consistently search across all of those different silos. Don't care where the content lives. What I really care about is the value of that data, the metadata that sits on top of that content, and having a consistent view that makes that information then findable across all of those different systems. I literally did a presentation on this at AIM, and one lady in the audience lifted her hand up and said, oh, here's how we do it. I have the passwords to all 9, 10, 11 of our different information systems, and I log in separately and pull all that customer communication and customer information together so we can respond to CCPA. Obviously not a very efficient approach. This tool, this extraction capability becomes very valuable to our customers in bridging across these information silos. So that's extraction. Now let's talk about automation. And here's a good example that I've kind of illustrated here. This, for our insurance and banking customers, #1 use case, forms processing. Okay, sounds simple, right? And before anybody raises their hand, because I get this a lot, hey, wait, we do forms processing today, OCR, ICR, things like that. Yeah, the challenge we see though is a lot of these forms are not coming into the mailroom anymore, right? It's not a scan and extract or OCR type activity. It's coming through email, it's coming through social, it's coming through a variety of different sources. And what our customers are asking us for is kind of a enterprise AI service that allows them to process this information. So what we're doing here, we receive a form in. The first thing we need to figure out is what form is it? So classification is the first activity. What form is it? And then once we know the form, we know what information needs to be on that form. And the first question they're asking us for, and this is different than traditional OCR, ICR, is has the form been completed correctly? Has it been signed in the right places? And particularly for this customer, it's been about policy issuance and new policies. So they're getting the applications in. They want to make sure that the form's been filled out completely. If it hasn't, I want to do intelligent exception handling, manage that process, be able to push it to a customer service rep or perhaps even right back to the customer to have them complete the form properly. And if I do it really, really well, I can even identify where information is missing or a signature is missing to make that process very, very streamlined. So think about that customer experience there. We've immediately identified automatically that there's a challenge, and we've pushed it back to the customer instantly so that we can correct that challenge. Now, if the form has been completed correctly, from an automation standpoint, the next thing I want to do is data extraction, forms processing. So I want to OCR that form. I want to pull the appropriate values out and perform the entity extraction that we talked about earlier. Now I can push that information into external systems, perhaps into my policy admin system, into an underwriting system to further accelerate that particular form through the process. And then, of course, I can do intelligent routing and push the work to an underwriter to actually begin the policy process. So very, very common example, whether that's banking, whether that's insurance, even in healthcare, and what we're loving right now about being able to build out some of these circumstances. This is actually a property and casualty insurer that we've been talking to. And what they're looking to do is bring new intelligence around accident photos. So you see someone here that's perhaps been in an automobile accident and they are submitting photos. And if you think about the modern claims process, right? We talk about photos, we talk about video. A lot of times we think about marketing. But here, for a property and casualty insurer, that claims process today is largely driven by photos, video, perhaps even audio related to automobile accidents. So we're kicking off the process here. First thing they want to do is determine whether that photo being submitted is actually a duplicate photo from a photo and an accident that's already been submitted previously. Believe it or not, it's a fraud detection piece. And believe it or not, in this circumstance, people submit the same photos for duplicate claims, for fraudulent claims. And if you think about it from a bigger picture perspective, an organization might have thousands of claims adjusters inside the organization. The odds of that one adjuster seeing the same photo twice, not very good. So here, what they want to be able to do, and here what we're talking about is almost a content lake, right? It's a collection of previous accident photos, data associated with those photos. But the first thing they want to do is use AI to check and see whether or not that's fraudulent. If so, obviously they're going to kick off a case management process and deal with the fraud. The second thing they want to be able to do once they've determined it's not fraudulent is then begin to look at that same content lake to do comparison. So similar vehicles, similar damage, and make, models, so on and so forth, to be able to almost instantaneously come back with a damage estimate. So they begin to build intelligence inside their organization about, hey, we've had 3 accidents just like this, and we expect the damage to be in this range. And that's a decision or information that they can extract from this photo and from their previous experience with these damage claims. Now, I can automatically take that damage estimate, push that claim out into the repair network. And as I look across that repair network, I can compare my internal damage estimate against estimates I'm getting from that repair network and begin to make automated decisions about what are appropriate estimates, and then finally push this on to the claims adjuster to finally process it. So what we're doing here is bringing new insight into the business based on content and data they have, and we're using AI to enable that process. Like I said, really interesting edge case here, but a good example of how they're getting new insight in their business. So we talk about the promise, and the simple promise of AI is really to begin to understand content and data as well as a knowledgeable human, but to do it at extreme scale across all different auto accidents or across all the different forms that come into an organization. The other piece, and we talked about classification, we talked about data extraction, we talked about enriching content metadata. The more data I get about content, more intelligence I get about content, now I can begin to predictively deliver information to the right person at the right time. I can analyze usage of information, understand the importance of that information based on user interaction with it. I can begin to recognize patterns and connections. That's what we're doing in that model with the auto insurer in looking at the different photos and identify outlying data points. Great example, that fraud use case. So today we're really focused on kind of the automation and kind of handling some of the mundane tasks. But as we move forward, we think there are so many different opportunities to leverage AI to really make us smarter about the information that we're using inside of our organization. So we went deep on AI. Let me talk about a few other things that are germane to financial services. And then, like I said, I'm going to pull it all back together with a specific customer example. Talked earlier about content not just being documents and scanned images anymore. One of the things we really see with our customers today is they're dealing with a lot of new and different content types, and they want to have insight into that content just like they do with documents and images. So a couple of challenges here, right? Obviously, the way you work with images, photos, video content is different than the way you work with documents or text-based objects. Social media, SMS, these are creating real volume and scale challenges for our customers. We have a customer today, they send out SMS and email messages to their customers. They want to be able to display those to their customer service representatives. Okay, great idea, right? But we're talking about 250 in most cases seconds or maybe 1 or 2 minutes to get that content into the So we need to work with them in new and different ways. And of course, we want to be able to deliver those not just to people in a desktop environment, but perhaps on mobile devices. We also are going to receive this information from mobile devices. And maybe we even need to think about where we store this information if you're a global organization. So there's a lot of complexity with modern content. We touched on this earlier. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but clearly content is a critical aspect of your customer experience. Statements, billings, customer communications, EOBs, obviously that's all stuff that you understand. Forms, applications, how you handle claims, video, photo coming into the organization, even your website information, as well as we talked about social, email, chat, SMS messages. This becomes part of that corpus of customer information, and it way. Okay. In fact, we see more silos today than we did 10 years ago. If you think about all the different tools that people use inside your organization to create, collaborate, work with, share content, right? We're moving to a point, and this is the whole point about ECM versus content services and a more modern approach. We don't need to get it all in one place. We're never going to get it all in one place. You've got SharePoint, you've got Box, you've got Dropbox in your organization. Duplicate or migrate everything into one place. Let's think about how we connect to it. Let's think differently about it. As I said earlier, I don't care where content lives. What I care about is kind of providing a comprehensive service that allows you to access designed to plug into these environments. We have the AI ML enrichment services that allow us to create a uniform paradigm for finding it. Now we have a single point of access with an open, standardized API that allows you to deliver that wherever you need to, whether it's business productivity apps, content, case management solutions, or even mobile apps and services inside the organization. So what we encourage our customers to really do is start thinking about content services and really taking a more modern approach to this. When we think about content services, we've also got to think about content and content-centric applications. So one of the other things that we look at in terms of deploying new products and services, we can have a great conversation about DAM. I don't think that's our conversation today, but certainly digital asset management plays a role in delivering new products and services to market. But what I really like to talk to customers about is thinking about how they deliver new services with their content to their customers, how they enhance that customer experience, how they deliver new products and services that are technology based. And think about your self-service customer applications. So our argument here, and I won't go too deep on this, but really is take a low-code approach. Think about business agility. And the case study I'm going to share with you in a moment is all about business agility. Okay. This really was an organization who wanted a foundational agile service that allowed them to build multiple points of service for their customer. So we believe a low-code approach makes much more sense here, right? Rapid design and prototyping, drag and drop configuration. You know, we do talk about low-code versus not no-code, okay? And the reason for that is we believe that if you're going to plug into different environments, if you're going to enable your customer experience at some point in time, you may need to code. So we need to give you that capability as well as strong configuration tools. The goal here really is to give you an environment where you can instantly provision new applications into the cloud, push it to test, push it to production, but quickly and easily. The old secret of ECM, 30 secret, 6 to 9 months to build things. New paradigm, you should be able to build things in weeks, not months. A lot of people will say, hey, what about solutions? Solutions help solve this problem. They accelerate time to value. They do. But the reality about solutions, they're not really out of the box. You spend a lot of time customizing. A lot of these solutions have thousands of lines of code built on top of them. So they create more silos in your organization, not less. You end up paying twice for them because one, you buy the platform, two, you buy the IP, and then actually you pay the third time because you go and actually pay someone to customize it for your use case. And finally, if an organization is investing in solutions, they're not investing in your platform and innovation for your platform. Here is cloud really for you should be about choice, right? It's no longer a discussion about on-premises versus cloud for us. It's really a conversation about whether you manage it or whether we help you manage it. I don't believe there's a one-size-fits-all approach for cloud, right? So SaaS offerings, SaaS applications solve unique problems, but when you're thinking about a content services platform, it really should give you the option, run it where you want it, run it when you want it, utilize your infrastructure preferences. So I don't care whether it's Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, you should have choice. You should have choice as to whether you manage it or we manage it. You also should be able to support hybrid configurations if you need to address regulations, data locality, things like that. The bottom line, it's about preference and it's about scale. This is an actual customer example. Dealt with this customer over the last 20 years. They've built a repository of about 10 billion objects. This is the customer that wants to do SMS messaging, email communications, as well as begin to consolidate their customer communications platform. So if you think about it, over the years, it took them almost 20 years to get to 10 billion objects. If they're adding 5 billion objects a year moving forward, you've got to think about how you're going to scale up to 15, 20, 25, 30, and ultimately beyond that billion objects in a repository. And that's something the cloud does very, very well. Finally, I'm just going to come back around on CCM. Something that we've been working with the Crawford team on, something that we see across all of our large banks and insurance customers, modern compliance mandates. We touched on this earlier, GDPR, CCPA. Fundamentally for both of these, one, customer has the right to know what information you have about them, and two, they have the right to have it deleted. Obviously, for you guys, you know, this is very, very, very hard to do with CMOD, Mobius, and existing CCM platforms, probably why you're Crawford customers today. We have a unique offering here that allows us to work with Crawford to ingest content, AFP print streams, PDF from these environments. We are the only solution that allows you to store either native AFP or burst, semi, fully, whatever you want to do, to PDF to store in our environment to move this information into the cloud. Tell you a bunch of things you already know about this. CMOD's old, it's expensive, mainframes are expensive, mainframes aren't cloud friendly, they're not mobile device friendly, they aren't friendly, period, okay? And CMOD's not compliant with GDPR or CCPA. If you tell me you don't operate in California, I'll tell you there are 15 other states that are considering this now. We think we have a really, really unique offering here. And we probably have 15 or 20 customers right now that we're talking to about getting off of CMOD Mobius because, quite frankly, they're really struggling with this content in this environment. AI, but one of the real values we see here, customers in this space, we typically find they have zero retention policy sitting over this information. So it's risky, it's expensive, they're storing stuff they don't need to, and we can use AI to solve this. We can use a platform with your CCM to bridge those silos, unlock the stuff that sits inside of CMOD or Mobius, unbind your information, hit that retention piece that we talked about, and obviously help you reduce costs and risk along the way. Talking to one customer right now, they are spending $15 million a year on CMOD. So let me tie it all together, real customer example, and we'll open up for questions. This is a top UK bank. This is actually a top global bank. They're top 5. We are specifically working with them in the UK, Great Britain. This was an organization that had 7 or 8 different content manager on-demand systems and large volume of documents spread across a bunch of different locations and systems. They specifically were looking to respond to GDPR, but they were also looking to put in place a foundation for their organization to really allow them to better deliver this information from a customer experience standpoint. So one of their first points of deployment, integration with existing customer service system, Salesforce. Second point of deployment, new mobile app for personalized statement delivery, giving the customers the ability to self-service. And of course, under GDPR, they have to respond to these subject access requests. What information do you have? And if they desire to, they need to be able to delete it. So they had to get this information out of CMOD on to our platform. It's a project that was completed in under 6 months. They were able to bring this new mobile app live. They are using our workflow capabilities. So when you think about automation to respond to these subject action requests, they've been able to bring all of these different silos together inside of their organization. And most importantly, what I find most compelling about this is when you talk to our customer about what he's doing here, the goal for them was not just to address GDPR. The goal for them was really to put an agile foundation for ongoing digital transformation. He talks much more eloquently than I do about this, but really putting in place an information management foundation that allows them to leverage their content, their customer communications more effectively as they move forward and strategically as an organization. So hopefully, and I'm sorry that was brief, but hopefully you see there, right? Efficiency and automation, taking cost out of the organization, improving their customer experience, agility to bring new products and services to market, getting that information into the cloud, and addressing GDPR and compliance requirements. So hopefully we ticked all the boxes there. And again, sorry it was brief, but really, really good story about how this customer is addressing some modern compliance challenges with our platform, with Crawford Technologies, and us working together. All right. Did I leave any time for questions, Aaron?
Well, that was a fantastic presentation. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We need to transition over to our next session. I just want to say thank you for that very insightful look at where ECM is, content services, how content is changing, what we need to do for customer communication management. Thank you once again. Audience, if you have any questions for Chris, please feel free to send them to me via chat. I'll make sure Chris gets those questions, and we'll answer your questions for you. Thank you.